Before we get started with a program, I would like everyone to please think about the number 3. Third time is the charm. 3 wishes. 3 musketeers. The Holy Trinity. Chant 3 times. Knock 3 times. So now I would like everyone, on the count of 3, to take a deep breath and really focus on our program for today. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much for attending the 3rd annual celebration of UN Habitat Day from the FIABCI-USA Hawaii Council. We are very excited to have you join us. Our theme today is Inclusive, Vibrant Neighborhoods and Communities, Actions to Address Spatial Inequality. So we're broadening out the focus here from just housing to the idea of spatial inequality. And spatial inequality means that basic urban services, quality public spaces, affordable housing, and livelihood opportunities are not evenly distributed. Fragmentation of urban space manifests itself in segregation and concentration of poverty and multiple deprivations in certain parts of the city. These sites of socioeconomic and spatial exclusion have higher levels of poverty, unemployment, crime, delinquency, and environmental hazards. So this is the month of Urban October. Today we're focusing on habitat and housing. Throughout the month we're going to be focusing on urbanization. So think about what we can do at this moment, at this very moment, where Mother Nature is telling us that if we destroy our environment, we destroy ourselves. Where Father Time is warning us, time is running out. Where it's ever more important for people of goodwill to get together in public-private partnerships for people. And that is what we're about today. We have government officials, we have people from the private sector and the not-for-profit sector over these next 2 days to talk about what we can do to address these issues, because we, in order to solve them, have to take responsibility for it. So today's theme is Honolulu's success in urban regeneration and inclusion. So before we have our panels and discussions, we're hoping to have, we did get a video message from the UN Habitat Executive Director. She is we are very, very fortunate that she made a message especially for us. This is UN Habitat Executive Director Maimunah, Mohd, Sharif. So let's hope we have the video with sound.
Excellencies, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, aloha and a very good morning to all of you. I hope this message finds you all safe in these difficult times. It is a pleasure to participate, although remotely, in this event on inclusive, vibrant neighborhoods and communities, action to address spatial inequality. I want to start by thanking the International Real Estate Federations, or FIABCI, Hawaii Council for organizing this event and for allowing me to deliver this message. This webinar is of crucial importance for the priority theme of this year's World Habitat Day, which is Housing for All, a Better Urban Future. The goal of this year's World Habitat Day is to raise the profile of housing as a catalyst for ensuring an adequate standard of living for all and reduce inequalities. Today, UN Habitat is also launching a 5-week campaign, Housing for All, to emphasize that housing is more than just a roof. Housing is more than a commodity. It is a fundamental human right and the cornerstone of people's health, dignity, safety, inclusion, and well-being. Housing is also highlighted in the SDGs through Target 11.1, which calls for access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing by 2030. The new urban agenda has set an unprecedented recognition of how adequate housing can contribute to sustainable development and welfare. The future of inclusive and sustainable urbanization depends on how policymakers, private sector, and civil society position housing as a priority in the debate around sustainable development. To this scope, realizing SDG 11 and its targets requires a concerted, coordinated, and multidisciplinary efforts from all stakeholders. Lacking such coordinated efforts, the growth of cities and nations around the world will not generate equally distributed opportunities and positive outcomes, but in growing poverty and inequality. While states have an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the right to adequate housing, this can only be achieved through the sharing of responsibilities among national and local governments, international and regional organizations, private sector, civil society, and those who should benefit from these fundamental rights. National policies should reflect, for example, the increasingly crucial role played by the private sector and other non-governmental actors in delivering adequate, safe, and affordable housing solutions. The commodifications of housing and the related unsustainable increase in housing costs require policymakers to work together with the private sector and civil society towards the creation of inclusive housing policy. It also requires a broad review of the current approaches to welfare, housing, and land governance that will entail a shift from a commodity-based to a human rights-based approach to housing and to its socio-economic function. The COVID-19 crisis has contributed to highlighting the importance of this task. Deep-rooted inequalities in cities globally are leading the pandemic to have a disproportionate impact on groups that were already in a situation of greater vulnerability. In the housing sphere, the spread of COVID-19 has contributed to exacerbate a pre-existing global housing crisis, which was already affecting 20% of the global population. COVID-19 has, for example, heavily impacted people's ability to afford houses and services, aggravating a pre-existing housing scarcity and hitting groups in an already vulnerable situations the hardest. Additionally, the quality of housing and its habitability had major implications for people's health during lockdowns and stay-at-home orders, increasing exposure to contagion for people already living in overcrowded and inadequate housing conditions. I would like to end by commending the efforts and commitments of the International Real Estate Federation. I would also like to reiterate UN Habitat's support to all stakeholders in achieving sustainable and inclusive cities with adequate, accessible, and affordable housing for all. Mahalo, and thank you very much.
Executive Director, it was very, very special for us to be able to continue our work in recognition with UN Habitat. Obviously, there are people all over the world celebrating, so because we have for the last 3 years committed to this, we were able to get on her agenda, and I think it's 5 in the morning in Malaysia where she is, so she was going to join us live, but it's better for her to give us a message a taped message. And so now we are going to go to one of our good friends from the mayor's office, Edwin Hawkins, who is the executive director of the Office of Economic Development for the City and County of Honolulu, who has joined us and supported us. And so he's going to bring us greetings from the city, the mayor, and his own remarks. Edwin?
Thank you, Bill, and hello, everybody. Aloha, everyone from Honolulu. I just want to welcome everybody to this World Habitat Day 2020. These are unprecedented times, but life and our work goes on. And I'm glad to see that you didn't pass up with this opportunity, Bill, and have something that's important like this virtually, to have somebody from around the world join us. I'm sure there are other people in many parts of the country also that are joining. So congratulations to FIABCI for always taking the lead. You know, it's such a pleasure that I've had over the years of associating with this group. Bill, of course, but my friends, Judy Sykes, Jeff Lau. I also see Jack Legal signed on. I think he's going to be a panelist, but it also takes me back to the time last October. Seems so long ago, but Honolulu hosted the United States Conference of Mayors, and Jack Legal was on a panel. We had a number of sessions to talk about housing. I know that you're going to highlight Kauiki Village, and we took the visiting mayors to there to showcase that. So a lot of connections and a lot of things that happened, and FIABCI was, and the people associated with that were integral parts of that. And this is a very high-powered group. You know, I'm always amazed at the energy that you bring to the passion, to what you do for housing the homeless, the low income. You know, that focus is what really impresses me. So I'm here to read a message, and I'd like to do that from our mayor. He sends his regrets. He couldn't be here, but he wanted to send a message to you. And let me just read what he says, okay? And pleasure that I greet and welcome the organizers and participants of the two-day meeting which celebrates UN World Habitat Day on October 5th, 2020. I am happy to note that this year's celebration through a webinar in lieu of an in-person meeting is being hosted by the Hawaii Council of the International Real Estate Federation, FIABCI, in partnership with the UN Habitat World Urban Campaign. Amid these difficult times of the pandemic, it is laudable that this online dialogue is being held among key players in the real estate industry to find solutions for inclusive, vibrant neighborhoods and communities, and to address issues of spatial inequality in Hawaii and around the world. My administration, through the Office of Housing, Department of Land Management, and the Department of Planning and Permitting, has tirelessly worked with your organization with other community partners to provide basic urban services, quality public spaces, and affordable housing. Examples include the public-private partnership housing at Kauiki Village and the various construction projects associated with transit-oriented development. Along the way, we have attained some successes and made lots of progress, but great challenges and difficult issues still remain. I am confident, however, that your commitment and cooperation, we will come up with the innovative solutions to urban living and ultimately succeed together. On behalf of the City and County of Honolulu, I congratulate you and wish all of you a successful and fruitful conference. Signed, Kurt Caldwell, Mayor. And I'm glad to see that we're going to have some city people joining you, either panelists or discussants. I know that Harrison Rue will be talking about transit-oriented development tomorrow from our planning and permitting. And Andy Robbins, I think, is going to talk about the rail. So I'm glad that you've got some great people that are working here. And finally, let me just introduce our Director of our Office of Housing, Mark Alexander, who has been really in the heart of getting housing to our people in all areas, including the low income and the homeless. So with that, let me just quickly introduce Mark. I'd like to have him come over here and just say a few words, if that's okay, Bill.
Aloha, Bill, and thank you all. Congratulations on having this conference, especially during these times that are so challenging. Ed wanted me to just mention a few things. I think people are very familiar that Mayor Caldwell has made housing a very key priority for himself and for his administration. And that involves changing laws and policies, for example, accessory dwelling units, making possible new affordable housing requirements, as well as incentives, addressing short-term rentals. This has really made some very significant results. He set as a target in his second administration to have at least 800 affordable housing units permitted and built every year. In 2017, that number is around 1,100. In 2018, it was over 1,300. The city's own portfolio since 2016 has grown from around 1,200 units to just over 2,500 units that have actually been built or are in the process of being built as we speak. And then, of course, public-private partnerships like Kawiki Village. This translates into real people. I just checked recently, there are over 500 residents living at Kawiki Village. These are formerly homeless people. Without that public-private partnership led by Dwayne Kurisu and his colleagues, there'd be that many more homeless children and families on our streets. And finally, his administration is committed to research. And so we work very closely with the UH, whether studying housing first, or UCLA, Berkeley, that did a study on the empty homes tax and the impact that it would have on us. I think all of these things are a sign of us all working together, focused on helping vulnerable people, delivering concrete results. And so thank you so much for this conference. I look forward to listening to some of the presentations and the further discussions. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ed. Thank the mayor. It's very, very exciting for us to have the participation of city officials. I always think, what we see is that it's really the mayors that can make a difference. The policy, mayors have the power to make a difference. And so I think we'll see that all around the world. And so it's very, very exciting for us to have that and have that message. So again, thank you very much. Now, Florentino Dulalia is the FIABCI World President. He is based in the Philippines. Again, since it is very early at that time, we have a video message from the World President, FIABCI World President.
Officers and members of FIABCI-USA, Hawaii Council, President Ms. Judy Sykes, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of FIABCI, the International Real Estate Federation, I welcome you all to this celebration. My heartfelt congratulations to FIABCI-USA Hawaii Council for organizing this momentous event. How I wish we can celebrate this event face to face. It's been a long time. When I last visited Hawaii, it was in 2015 during the FIABCI Asia Pacific Congress. Hope I can visit Hawaii again soon. When UN World Habitat Day was declared 2 years ago, Hawaii Council is one of the first to organize this gathering and continue to be the instrument in providing a forum with key players in the industry on practical solutions for inclusive, vibrant neighborhoods and communities, not only in Hawaii, but around the world. With the challenges posed by the pandemic to real estate, FIABCI plays an essential role with its special consultative status at the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, of the United Nations, dedicated to sustainable development, providing overall guidance and coordination. I am fortunate to inform you that there is an ongoing negotiation to extend the cooperation for another 7 years between FIABCI and UN Habitat for the implementation of the City Prosperity Initiative Perception Index. CPIPI is an online tool to capture people's perception of the progress of the city in becoming more inclusive, secure, resilient, and sustainable. This tool uses 6 dimensions of property, prosperity, and sustainability: productivity, infrastructure development, quality of life, equity and social inclusion, environment sustainability, and urban governance. It offers a recent and reliable opinion from the public and expert on their vision, thought, and feelings on the sustainability, well-being, integrated development, and prosperity of the city. I can say that this dialogue or celebration is very timely. Through this forum, we may be able to address issues on equal distribution of basic urban services, quality public spaces, affordable housing, livelihood opportunities, which will lead to awareness of poverty and multiple deficiencies in certain pockets of the city. Equality is more than a goal in itself, necessary to meet the challenges of reducing poverty, promoting sustainability development, and building good governance. Thank you. Again, congratulations. Keep safe always.
Thank you, Florentino. In the Philippines, they were very excited to come to Hawaii in 2015. So in addition to the last 2 years of celebrating Habitat Day, 2015 we had the Asia Pacific Real Estate Congress, and at that time, actually, we had officials on TOD, or Transit-Oriented Development, from Indonesia, from Japan, and so tomorrow we're going to hear an update on how the TOD is going. We're going to move into some of the projects that Hawaii has been doing. We were very excited to have a new partner. This is a new partner that we just met very recently, and this is the Hawaii Green Growth Council. And so Brianna Rose is going to join us with a message, but I'm hoping we can show a quick video with sound on the Hawaii Green Growth Initiative.
Hawaii as a whole society step forward and express our care for our island home and our desire to see the lands, the waters, and the people of Hawaii thrive. As we come to the year 2020, we start a very important decade for us from 2020 to 2030.
And the sail plan for the hub here in Hawaii has really been mapped out already by the Aloha Plus Challenge. It's there. The sail plan that heads us to better leadership decisions, better policies, and a way to allow community to be a part of something extraordinarily special in their own homeland.
In Hawaii, we have a really unique framework. It's the Aloha Plus Challenge, and it really is our local framework for implementing the Sustainable Development Goals in a meaningful way that's authentic to us.
As part of the 5-year anniversary of the Aloha Plus Challenge, we're reviewing collective progress at the start of 2020, the decade of action to 2030. While nations submit their voluntary national review to the UN, cities such as New York, LA, and Helsinki have submitted a voluntary local review. Hawaii will become the first statewide voluntary local review through the Aloha Plus Challenge, with public, private, and civil society partners with the Hawaii Green Growth Local 2030 Hub. In July 2020, Hawaii can share local progress on the global goals with the international community.
Yeah, so one of the benefits, I think, of already having the Aloha Plus challenge and dashboard is all of the stakeholder work that went into developing it. So there's already an existing network of people that can be drawn upon to help guide the process to do the voluntary local review. So this is an opportunity for the voluntary local review to really help join county, state, and global adaptation and mitigation initiatives. So for example, at the county level, I think with some of the OLA initiatives that came out with the City Resilience Plan, we have different partners that have been identified as being relevant to carrying out some of these adaptation actions and initiatives.
Today we have the opportunity to take stock of our progress. Where are we on track? Where are there gaps?
I think we're excited at the Hawaii Tourism Authority to participate in the VLR because, again, it gives us an honest report card. It gives us an honest feedback of what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, things we've addressed and things we haven't addressed.
And make it not just a part of making Hawaii more resilient, but being an example for the Pacific Islands, for the nation and for the world.
I think what we have as a strength is as an island community, we've always had stories to tell. And we continue to tell stories, whether it be in the visitor industry, right? We have a beautiful destination with a deep, rich heritage of a host culture, but also a multicultural, ethnic society that's come together and said, hey, we're all one race, we're all one human race on an island Earth, and we only have one shot at this.
Thank you very, very much. And now I would like to introduce Brianna Rose, who is the Director of Operations and Partnerships for the Hawaii Green Growth Local 2030 Hub. She has supported the statewide network since it was founded in 2011. She has worked with the network-based initiatives for nearly a decade to advance local and global impact through collaborative action. She's the president of the board for Kanu Hawaii, a not-for-profit working to build more compassionate and resilient communities, including with the annual Volunteer Week, which is Hawaii's largest volunteer-focused campaign. Brianna was selected for the Obama Foundation's inaugural Asia Pacific Leaders Program as one of 200 emerging leaders representing over 30 countries, states, and territories across the region, and recognized as a part of Pacific Business News 2020 class of 40 under 40 honorees. Brianna is a graduate of the University of San Francisco and was born and raised in Maui. So Brianna, we welcome your intervention at this time.
Thank you so much, Bill. And thank you for the invitation to share on Hawaii's voluntary local review today and this event to work World Habitat Day and the importance of housing for all and sustainable, equitable, and inclusive communities. So building on the video you just saw, I wanted to share a bit about the Hawaii Voluntary Local Review. This was presented at the UN General Assembly several weeks ago by Governor Ige and Senator Schatz at the event on American Leadership Advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, hosted by UN Foundation and Brookings Institute. Following a session by all 4 counties at the UN High-Level Political Forum on Hawaii and Pacific SDG Leadership. Hawaii's first statewide comprehensive voluntary local review of the SDGs. It's the first in the nation of its kind, and we're so thrilled. I think you get a sense of the partners that were involved from the video you just saw. Hawaii joined other cities such as New York, Los Angeles, and others from around the world in pioneering the Voluntary Local Review, or a VLR as it's called, which complements the voluntary national reviews on the UN Sustainable Development Goals presented by the counties to show progress towards the global goals. And actually, it was great to hear from Edwin earlier. This was actually very first announced by Mayor Caldwell at the US Conference of Mayors last July, and the intention to really show a voluntary local review, not by a single county, but also by the other mayors, governor, and a statewide effort as part of the Hawaii Green Growth Voluntary Local Review Local 2030 Hub. So our VLR reflects an ongoing stakeholder engagement process in Hawaii to measure our local progress on the UN Sustainable Development Goals through a locally determined priorities set by the Aloha Plus Challenge. Hawaii launched the Aloha Plus Challenge in 2014. This was a statewide commitment for 2030, led by the governor, 4 county mayors, the state legislature, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, with business and civil society partners. So really getting at that public-private partnerships that we've heard other folks speak about through Hawaii Green Growth, which is a statewide network that brings together government, private sector, and civil society partners with over 150 individuals, institutions across Hawaii from different sectors. So what the Aloha Plus Challenge did was identify 6 priority areas across environmental, social, and economic sectors for 2030 in the areas of clean energy, local food and agriculture, waste reduction, natural resource management, green workforce, economy, education, and then smart sustainable communities, which I think is really pertinent to what we're talking about today. Really looking at affordable housing, mobility, and resilience of the built environment. The Aloha Plus Challenge was based on input from statewide partners, grounded in Hawaii's legacy of systems thinking and sustainability and indigenous knowledge. So Hawaii launched the Aloha Plus Challenge 1 year prior to the adoption of the SDGs at the international level, which I think is just really significant to think about. And the launch was followed right then by a 4-year consultation
by the Hawaii Green Growth Network with partners across Hawaii to identify community-based metrics and really looking at measuring what matters to our communities, really looking at convening diverse stakeholders that met across all 4 counties over a number of years. So Hawaii's local progress on the 6 Aloha Plus Challenge goals are really looking at all of 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and they're now tracked on an online open data dashboard with 37 targets, over 200 indicators that were co-developed with partners across sectors. The Aloha Plus Challenge really positioned Hawaii as a leader, I think, naturally in sustainability, collaboration, partnerships, public-private partnerships, and Hawaii was recognized as a Local 2030 hub by the UN, which just launched this new initiative. Local 2030 really focused on local solutions to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and really looking at our local framework that we have here to actually implement the SDGs, but through a local and cultural lens that really resonates with our communities. So as a Local 2030 hub for the SDGs, we were really happy that Hawaii could present the first statewide voluntary local review last month at UNGA at the UN General Assembly, but using 6 years of data and trends that we're already tracking on Hawaii's Aloha Plus dashboard. And so this voluntary local review provides a 2020 benchmark showing where we are on our 2030 commitments, looking at how we can guide action over the next decade to 2030, and importantly, looking at how this can support and inform COVID economic recovery, of which inclusion, sustainability, equity are critical components, especially in terms of really critical and basic needs such as affordable housing. So this panel is just, and this day is really super pertinent, and we hope that this can be a resource really for decision makers, experts, practitioners, and our communities at large. And I think just in terms of economic recovery, a new initiative was launched called Aloha Connects Innovation by the state, Economic Development Association of Hawaii, Sultan Ventures, and others. Launched this program using CARES Act funding to connect 650 displaced workers with local companies before the end of the year to create new jobs, workforce training opportunities, really looking at the sectors of the Aloha Plus Challenge that were outlined in the voluntary local review. So we hope that this continues to serve as a resource as we look at economic recovery efforts and the number of critical issues that we need to face in the coming times. And lastly, just say, while the VLR provides a 2020 snapshot of where we are today in Hawaii, the Aloha Plus dashboard on the state.gov website tracks all of these indicators really year-round in terms of making this information available, accessible, transparent. And I think, it's not a one-time report and it's not a one-time process. And the issues we're talking about, are one-time dialogues. And I think that this is a beautiful part of an ongoing discussion, an ongoing effort, ongoing conference. And this is really part of convening regularly to assess the data, assess the critical issues we'll be speaking about today, policies, initiatives that can advance our local framework for the Sustainable Development Goals here in Hawaii, the Aloha Plus Challenge. So with that, thank you again for the opportunity to share. Be happy to put the voluntary local review in the chat box and just welcome your engagement and partnership. I'm really looking towards these 2030 goals and wishing everyone a productive discussion today to advance the SDGs and urban regeneration and inclusion. Thank you so much, and mahalo.
Thank you very much, Brianna. It was very, very exciting to see your presentations at the UN General Assembly. And I'll also note that I'm not sure if you were in Abu Dhabi, but we had the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi just before actually COVID was just racing around the world. At the time we didn't know. So that was in February where we had, and that was really the decade of action toward developing this, to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. So it was a great thing. The next one will be in Poland in 2 years. And so what we hope is that everybody is encouraged to really get involved with the UN, UN Habitat, and all of the organizations, particularly in the industry, so that we can help. So it was a very, very exciting time. And just to reiterate, 2020 to 2030 is the decade of action. So we have to really do something. Everybody has to take action. So that's what it's really about. So thank you again very much. So what we want to do now is we're going to move into our major panel. But before we do that, we've got one more video to show, which is Salt at our Kakaako, which actually won our Grand Prix of Real Estate Award by the Kamehameha schools. When one of our panelists is going to be on and talking about the future plan. But this is a video really about one of the themes, which is about urban regeneration. So later on, we're going to be talking about, building new housing. But the key here we have to understand, and I said this actually last time I was in Hawaii, and I will say add to it again. So last time, we were in Hawaii, I asked the question, is there a shortage of land? And, well, there certainly is not a shortage of land. There's a shortage of land that is properly used. And so we also, and I'm going to give a pitch now about the movie Push, which is you all have access to. You should have a code to watch the movie Push. But there's also this mistaken belief that there's a shortage of housing. There's not a shortage of housing. There are empty condo towers every city in the world. There's a shortage of housing that is correctly made for the people and the needs. So we've got a lot of issues to discuss. This is going to be 2 days. We're going to have another discussion tomorrow, but I'd like to show the SALT video as an example of urban regeneration.
A bowl of Simon, sensible. Can you believe that?
You had pride coming from Kaka'ako.
These areas were used for resource gathering of the community, salt making, fish farming in the ponds. Salt was very important. It was also considered gold at one time. Historically, we find that these areas moved into industrialized uses. These lands are also landscapes of history, where we have had generations of people living here and stories, and those stories have shaped our community.
It was like a plantation community, but very packed in tight. It was like a little village. Everybody was poor, so we're all on equal footing.
Kaka'ako was all about family. It was all about community. Because I think if I remember anything significant about Kaka'ako, it was the family spirit.
This is a picture of my mother at our family Saimin stand. Kaka'ako Saimin or Matsuda Saimin. We didn't have really a commercial name. It was kind of a gathering place for a lot of the Kaka'ako people. Best Saimin, not in Kaka'ako, in Honolulu.
Mother Waldron Park. All of the different camps would come, congregate, maybe eyeball each other. Maybe, of course, I meet you at the park. Kaka'ako is really rugged, so the camps would be defending each other, that sort of thing.
The lands of Kaka'ako have supported Kamehameha schools for many years. Initial uses that we see here now in industrial have provided the revenue stream for the schools and for our educational programs. So Kaka'ako's redevelopment plan looks to reinvigorate Kaka'ako, to once again bring back that identity of Kaka'ako, to bring back that place which created this salt, this gold.
Kaka'ako right now can be the model for what is all good about Hawaii. That spirit would be wonderful to return to.
I hope through the way you plan it, the kind of facilities you build, and the kind of environment you provide, that people that live there, even though they may come in as strangers, would end up feeling this is a community.
We will need to have people that live here and will want to learn about those histories, will want to learn about that past and embrace it, so that those stories of Kaka'ako can live on, and also so that they can create the next chapter in that story.
Project which actually won, FIABCI-USA has the Grand Prix of Real Estate, which is a awards program for outstanding real estate developments. And so this was one of the projects that won the Grand Prix of Real Estate in 2019, the awards for innovative development and really a master plan. And so we are going to hear more about that master plan and as a part of our main panel. So now we are ready to go to our main panel. And I'd like to introduce Jack Legal, who is the president of the Hawaii Association of Realtors and who has been supporting us all along every single time. And so he's going to be the moderator for our main panel today. So Jack, I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you, Bill. And welcome everybody. and all those that I cannot see on screen. I know you're out there, about 144 or something like that. I know we are over 100 who signed up for this conference this morning. So today, as Bill said, we celebrate the 3rd annual celebration of the UN World Habitat Day, sponsored and organized by FIABCI. And so today we have high-powered panelists. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read their bios, their introductions to who they are. And at the same time, hopefully they will integrate in their presentation the answers to these 2 questions that we provided them. And the questions are, while the lack of affordable housing is one aspect of spatial inequality, how can new projects help fight social exclusion, improve Honolulu economy, dynamism, and social integration? The second question is, housing for all is a laudable concept. What actions can we take to address the continuing stigma around affordable housing and housing for marginalized groups? So allow me to introduce to you in one time. I'm just gonna read their bios, and from after that, they will speak. The first speaker is Erin Kirihara, is Senior Vice President of Ryder Levette Bucknell's North American practice and a member of the firm North American Board of Directors. As the director in charge of the Honolulu office, she is responsible for project oversight, management of client relations, business development, operations, and strategic growth for the Hawaii region. Throughout her 16-year career with RLB, Erin has been involved with numerous new build and renovation projects across the Hawaiian Islands, including housing and mixed-use developments that are at the core of Honolulu dynamic urban communities. To date, she has successfully managed a portfolio of projects that exceeds $3 billion in value, with specialized expertise in hospitality, residential, and commercial sectors. Our next panelist is Paul K. Yonamine. He's the chairman and CEO of Central Pacific Financial Corporation, the parent company of Central Pacific Bank, at which he serves as its executive chairman. Prior to joining Central Pacific Financial Corporation, Yonamine was executive chairman of GCA Corporation, Japan, the largest independent M&A advisory investment bank listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, specializing in technology-based cross-border M&A advisory services with 18 offices across 10 countries. He is chair elected of the board of directors of the U.S.-Japan Council and is also on the board of directors of the Pacific International Center for High Technology Research. He is co-chair of the Economy Committee of the Hawaii Executive Collaborative Change Initiative and a member of Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and Move Oahu Forward. He is a graduate of the University of San Francisco and holds a CPA designation. The next panelist is Timothy Yee. He's president of SAMKOO Pacific, LLC, and SAMKOO Hawaii, LLC. Since 2013, in charge of real estate development projects in urban Honolulu area. Under his leadership, SAMKOO and his team created 2 affordable housing projects named Kapilani Residence and the Central Ala Moana, facilitated by the State of Hawaii Agency, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation under the 201H program. Timothy Yee was born and raised in South Korea and came to Hawaii in July 1983 as an immigrant at the age of really young, 15 years old. He was a youth pastor for 22 years before he started his development career in 2013, serving the youngsters in Hawaii to make the right choices to become good leaders. He is also president of a nonprofit organization, 501c3 Sharing and Caring Foundation, which is actively supporting children who are in need of daily food, medical attention, and building schools for their education in Cambodia and the Philippines. The next speaker is Chris Deuchar, is Kamehameha School Senior Director, Planning and Development, Commercial Real Estate Division. He leads and manages all the planning and development activities for the division portfolio of assets, currently valued at $3.7 billion. Chris works closely and collaborates with various KIAS leaders and division to create holistic real estate plans that advance KIA's mission and value and greatly enhance KIA's profile in the community as a landowner. Chris is an active member of the Urban Land Institute, serving as the Honolulu District Chair 2017 to 2018, and is a member of the Urban Development Mixed-Use Green Flight National Product Council. Chris' philanthropic efforts include serving on the board of directors for Halekipa, House of Friendliness, a fully accredited nonprofit social services agency. Chris serves as the co-chair for both the Annual Giving Committee and the Facilities Committee. Halekipa annually serves over 2,000 of Hawaii's at-risk youth and their families. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our panelists for this morning. Let's start with Erin Kirihara.
Thank you, Jack. Wait for our presentation to load. I'm happy to be here as a panelist today to share some insight on Hawaii's construction costs and our market outlook. A general rundown of my presentation today will be some background on our firm, an introductory look at construction economics, and an update on our Q3 cost report and our projections on market outlook. For those of you who are less familiar with our firm, RLB provides professional services to manage construction projects. Our role is to provide expert advice and facilitate solutions that help our clients control the cost, time, and quality of construction projects. In our capacity as project managers, cost consultants, and advisory professionals, we've contributed to a wide range of housing types that expand options for local families to enjoy living in urban Honolulu. This includes projects along the Kapiolani corridor that set a standard for mixed income developments, such as Kapiolani residences and the Central Ala Moana condo towers, where we're pleased to serve as owners' representatives to SAMKOO Hawaii. In Waikiki, we've managed costs and construction of a new tower, which will offer market rate and affordable rental homes, as well as more targeted projects that diversify our neighborhood through mixed uses, such as projects in the Pensacola Street area of Ala Moana and the redevelopment of major community housing in Kalihi. Some of you may be familiar with our quarterly cost report, which tracks the true bid cost of construction in 12 major cities across North America, including Honolulu. We've been tracking these costs in Honolulu for nearly 20 years. So we've built a database that paints a picture of how the market has behaved historically, in addition to providing reliable base to projects in what may lay ahead as far as terms of cost trends. When we refer to construction costs, what we're talking about are hard costs that include labor, materials, equipment, subcontractors, bonds, insurance, taxes, and general contractors' overhead and profit. As to how our data is derived, we have a list of construction goods that we include in terms of categories above, which will reach out to respective local vendors and suppliers to obtain real-time pricing. We also take into account factors such as oil and gas prices, material and supply chain constraints, and any political influences that may impact the construction industry. Key statistics such as GDP, or gross domestic product, consumer confidence, construction and national unemployment rates, and also the Architectural Billings Index to project the cost escalation factor. And the most often overlooked factor, what the market will bear, the basic economic theory of supply versus demand. When it comes to construction costs, they're a real-time indicator of the bidding market, where supply and demand is primarily weighted on the number of ongoing projects, as well as projects that are upcoming in the pipeline compared to labor or contractor availability. We're on an island where there's a fixed labor pool and contractors that specialize in certain work. There are a handful of general contractors that can build high rises. When the labor pool cannot meet the demands of the market, premium cost for subsistence is paid for out-of-state labor. Additionally, we're subject to rate increases in shipping costs for materials to be sent to the islands. Construction costs will generally follow the business cycle, experiencing peaks and valleys for periods of growth and decline. Expansion is the result of many projects taking place within a period of time, increasing demand for labor, and thereby construction costs will rise. Contractions take place once those projects continue to close out or are canceled, and contractors look for new work to fill their backlog. A hungry labor pool results in competitive bid pricing or decreased construction costs. At the beginning of the year, we had published in our Riders Digest that Honolulu will be in the trough growth period. The construction industry in Hawaii was due for a downturn, especially after 9 years of steady growth. We were forecasting this to occur in 2021 with a mild recession lasting 12 to 18 months. Instead, the COVID-19 pandemic arrived. So let's take a quick look to see where we were at pre-COVID. We had reported a national average increase in construction costs approximately at 4.93%, with the annual change for Honolulu of 6.12%. It's always more expensive to build here. Our Q2 report published in July reported a 0% change from Q1, which gave us an annual change of 4.53, so a drop of 1.5% in April of 2020. Today, our Q3 cost report was just published last week. We're reporting a 0% change again from Q2, which gives us an annual change of 2.82% between October 2019 and October 2020, continuing the trend of decreased or slowing construction cost escalation. While there's been increases in material prices such as lumber and copper, these increases are offset by other factors such as oil prices and productivity spikes with layoffs, leaving most efficient crews on the job sites. So today, looking at residential construction costs, this here is an indicative cost per square foot for multifamily and single family housing construction over the last 11 years. Multifamily housing, which is common in Honolulu, continues to be more feasible in terms of construction costs due to economies of scale. However, we see a premium of more than $120 a square foot, which is mainly contributed to escalation of pricing over time, with such things such as materials, wages, and shipping costs. Over 11 years, that's only $12 or so a year, so nothing crazy. While Q3 report states that the cost per square foot for multifamily housing, which includes townhomes, walk-up apartments, low, mid, and high-rise buildings, at a range of $205 to $460 a square foot, while the cost for single-family homes is $295 to $785, wide range due to likes of particular owners. Since COVID was called a pandemic in March, there are some of the impacts that we've noted in the construction industry. Projects varied between being shut down, suspended, or canceled. The industry has had to adapt to new rules to deal with the effects of COVID-19, including physical distancing, additional PPE, and job site health screening. This has resulted in some projects claiming for additional costs and time extensions. In many cases, on newly bid projects, we are seeing that these are non-existent costs. RLB's Q3 crane index, which tracks the number of fixed cranes on construction sites and gives us a simplified measure of the current state of the construction industry's workload in each location, noted that Las Vegas, Chicago, and New York City took the biggest impacts on construction activity. Globally, RLB research found that more than a third of the individuals believe that construction industry will take longer to recover than 15 months, while over 70% expected that the recovery would just take over 9 months. Here's a historic look of our cost data in red between 2008 and the present, showing the quarterly changes in blue in construction costs that follow the construction or business cycle trend in gray. As you can see here, there's a clear, although staggered relationship between the economy at large and Honolulu's construction costs. We've been studying the economic factors surrounding the 2008 global financial crisis in an attempt to understand the severity and duration that particular economic crises have and its effect on the industry and market. Although the 2008 global financial crisis and COVID-19 are completely different economic events, we hope that we can see some clues that will model our projections in getting out of this recession. We've modeled a curve similar to the global financial crisis, where we experienced a 2-year period of de-escalation in cost and a 2-year recovery period through 2025. This is our best forecast or crystal ball into the future, and the model is constantly being adjusted. For some thoughts in closing, a statement was issued in mid-September from the Federal Reserve Bank Open Market Committee on COVID-19 pandemic, noting that while the economic activity and employment have picked up in recent months, although well below the levels at the beginning of the year, the path of the economy will depend significantly on the course of the virus. The ongoing public health will continue to weigh on economic activity, employment, and inflation in the near future, and poses considerable risks for economic outlook over the medium term. Some commentary from a national and local perspective: this is not a normal recession. The impact on the project sectors vary. The effects of the pandemic will continue into 2021. We need to continue to watch the impact on state and municipal budgets, the effect of COVID-19 on tourism industry and the businesses as a whole impacted the state's tax collections. There's a chance the construction recession biting as the year goes on, depending on the flu versus COVID-19 and whether there's a new stimulus bill. We will continue to see downward pressure on construction prices, but not necessarily decreasing project prices in 2020. Examples of other project costs beyond construction are land and financing costs. If the recession deepens, there's a possibility of project prices decreasing in early 2021. This is what we've modeled in earlier slides. Inability for politicians to solve infrastructure needs with federal stimulus packages. The intent with this package is to keep the construction industry working. Similarly, in March, the state issued a list of $1.5 billion in shovel-ready projects, of which we need to see materialize. Elections will definitely have potential change or potential split the government. So we could see that impacting our construction industry moving forward. So what's the silver lining in all of this? What opportunities can come of this pandemic and economic situation? 2021 is the year to have your projects in the pre-construction phase while the industry is heading to a period of decline. We're forecasting the growth period to be in 2022, excuse me. Have your permits in hand, your design documents ready to bid, and purchase orders ready to buy material. You want to be in the position to press go when the timing is right. This concludes my presentation. You may have access to publications referenced in this presentation at our website, www.rob.com. And there you can download any of our reports noted here. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. As I've said, if we have time, we're going to ask these questions again to our panelists. The next panelist is Paul Yonamine. Paul, you're on.
Right, thank you. And first off, I'd like to thank Tim Yee, president of SAMKOO. He'll be on the panel next. I want to thank him for asking me to participate today. And Tim's a great friend and a good customer of Central Pacific Bank. I might also mention that it was wonderful seeing Fudge Matsuda in that video. As probably many of you know, he passed away recently, and we couldn't really go and say our, the right farewell, and it was wonderful to see him on video. Now, I have to qualify myself. I am not a specialist on spatial inequality by any means. And Tim asked me today to talk more about a Hawaii financial market update, because needless to say, what Erin covered just now around construction and development, the financial markets, banks, financial institutions have a great deal to do with that in terms of providing the appropriate financing to launch many of these projects. So let me give you a little overview on the financial market, or the status of banks in general in Hawaii. And again, my comments are not overly global. It's somewhat more local. I think that might be relevant for the majority of the audience today. So, pre-COVID, the economy and business was great. And if you recall, our unemployment rate was 2.5%. Tourism was at 10 million, and we're trying to figure out how to reduce that number. Banks were doing well, consistent quarterly loan and deposit growth. earnings were great, share prices were going up, and we were all poised for prosperous times. But despite all of that, we still had concerns, and that had to do with the lack of affordable housing, the homeless, and then naturally the ALIS population, asset limited, income constrained, employed population. So there was a lot of concern around space inequality. Come March 26th, governor calls a quarantine. Our tourism industry shuts down. And as many of you know today, we have 14% unemployment, but personally, I think it's closer to 20%. Just a lot of people who are not filing for unemployment today. The state of financial institutions, again, that Tim wanted me to touch on, just for everybody's information. So as soon as the quarantine hit, we went on with business contingency planning. We went into remote working. We closed a lot of branches temporarily. The one observation I might provide all of you is that all of the banks in Hawaii collaborated. All of the CEOs got together, and it was a real act of selflessness, and it was, how do we help the community? Naturally, with the CARES Act, we were fortunate that the feds moved quickly. They provided us with an ability to do a lot of automatic loan deferrals, and we did that in the commercial space for mortgages and also for consumer loans. And then naturally, with the shutdown in tourism, all of the banks knew that we had to totally capitalize off of the Paycheck Protection Program from the CARES Act. And we did exactly that. The Central Pacific Bank alone, we issued 7,000 Paycheck Protection Program loans, which constitute about 28% of all loans here in Hawaii. In addition to that, sorry about that. In addition to that, every bank provided a lot of contribution to the community. And, at Central Pacific Bank, we went ahead with a Keep Hawaii cooking program where we subsidized a lot of restaurant meals. We provided funds to Wahioa General to build out their COVID facilities and so forth and so on. But again, all of the banks stepping up. Now, despite the PPP, companies are still hurting. A lot of the funds have been utilized. And the general environment today is that all of the banks are increasing our loan loss provisions. And that's reflective of a lot of companies hurting right now with the shutdown in tourism. Lower profitabilities and share prices are quite low. As a matter of fact, most bank stocks are around half of what it was pre-COVID. But interestingly, in Hawaii, we have weathered crises in the past, whether it be the recession in 2008, the SARS problem, and also the Gulf War. And the reason why we've weathered through that quite well is because of the strong real estate values here in Hawaii. Central Pacific Bank, for example, our loan portfolio is 76% secured by real estate, Hawaii real estate. And in addition to that, we have very low loan to value ratios. So we have a lot of runway, even if we give deferrals. And this is one of the reasons why all of the financial institutions in Hawaii can weather through, even a crisis like the pandemic. Naturally, there are concerns around unsecured consumer loans, also around loans for the hotels and shopping centers. But on consumer loans, generally, people in Hawaii have very good FICO scores, FICO scores. And a lot of the hotel and shopping centers, they're strong financial sponsors, whether they're in the mainland or in Japan. But despite that, every financial institution here in Hawaii continually, almost on a weekly basis, does stress tests to make sure that our capital and liquidity are adequate. All of the banks in Hawaii, as far as I know, are in good shape. But needless to say, this can't go on forever. And all we can hope for is a fast recovery. Now, October 15th is the date that the governor has selected to open up trans-Pacific travel. And I'm just really hoping that we're going to be up for the challenge in terms of rapid testing, rapid COVID testing, and also hopefully by next summer, the distribution of a vaccine as well. The state seems to be rather bullish, saying that tourism, that 70% of tourism will return in 2021. I think that's somewhat overly optimistic. Our view at our bank, it's probably closer to 40% at best. But the good thing, again, is that there is a lot of pent-up demand, whether that's in the mainland or in Japan. What we need to do here in Hawaii is to make sure that we operationalize COVID containment, or even the distribution of the vaccine. Because if we don't do that, we can open it up and, God forbid, shut it down again. So we need tourism back. It's a huge industry for us. It's $18 billion. We are somewhat fortunate that our economy has diversification. It's not just tourism. We have a rather robust defense industry, reflective of the fact that there's still a lot of uncertainty in East Asia, and we anticipate the federal government to continue its investments in Pearl Harbor and other military facilities here in the state of Hawaii. Construction, especially given the shortage on housing, we anticipate will also be robust as well. So, these are just a few examples of non-tourism sector that can add a lot of, can be a catalyst for our economy just yet. But again, the shutdown in tourism is a pretty big factor. Now, what I'm about to say is more of my personal view. And I believe that the rail project on the island of Oahu for the city and county of Honolulu will be the largest economic opportunity, not just for the city and county of Honolulu, but for the state of Hawaii. And this probably, and from here, I'd like to touch on as best as I can spatial equality, because I believe the rail project can have a significant impact to providing more of that equality. And as many of you know, rail is over 20 miles. It's 21 stations. There are a lot of people upset about it because we've been, way over budget from roughly $3 billion to now over $9 billion. It's really unfortunate. In the last 10 years, we've had 5 CEOs at heart. And I'm sure, all the best intentions, but when you have so much turnover at the top, it's difficult to manage a project, plain and simple. Now, from the funding perspective, a lot of it comes from the general excise tax. Tourists have paid and will continue to pay once they come back, possibly a third or maybe a little more than a third of that bill. Residents will still be stuck with the lion's share of subsidizing those monies, and the federal government at about $2 billion. So that's a lot of money, but in my view, I feel that we still have a great opportunity in value creation to make all of this work. The key going forward is just making sure that we finish the project and at that inflated budget that we're talking about, over $9 billion. We don't want it to go a lot more higher than that. I grew up in Japan. I spent all my years through high school in Japan. And I've had the opportunity over time and a lot of my visits back to Japan to see best practices in rail and transit-oriented development. I'll have to tell you that even in Japan, where I believe rail and TOD is second to none, no one was ever happy about rail during construction. And almost for every project, it's been over budget and never came on time, okay? But the fact remains today that no one's complaining about it now because they were able to create that value. It really isn't just about transit. It is about TOD and the creation of new communities. I used to live 5 minutes from a rail station, and I've seen it go from just a really empty platform to a robust community where people find it as a destination and they go there for fun, for work, and so forth and so on. There's so much housing around these rail stations as well. In Japan, in 2011, there were only 6 million tourists to the entire country of Japan. 2019, there were 40 million. And these tourists went all over Tokyo and other parts of Japan. And and that's kind of hard to fathom for all of us, because in Hawaii, all of the tourists just end up in Waikiki. But just consider with rail about the possibility of creating yet more destinations that tourists can visit. And hopefully we'll we'll have a different sense about the 10 million tourists that come to Hawaii each year. Jenny, can you put up the slide for me, please? I want to just, it's not a slide that many of you haven't seen, but just wanted to refresh your memory here. Is that on, Jenny? I don't see it on. Thank you. Okay, so as you can see, this is the island of Oahu, and you see the rail project on the bottom there. Having spent so much time outside of Hawaii, I guess I could look at this rail project somewhat objectively. And my first reaction is there's just still so much land that this rail system doesn't touch. And my sense is that there's just more tremendous opportunities down, in the future of extending that. We could create more communities if we have that type of transportation infrastructure. Naturally, we're going to need roads and utilities and so forth and so on. And that's a totally different subject, where you have to address the fact that the state of Hawaii has the highest electricity costs in the world, possibly. And material costs, including construction costs, are extremely expensive. And it could possibly be because of the Jones Act. These are some of the other issues that we have to address as we try to populate other parts of the island, and also be able to construct affordable housing. Now, I think, given this scenario, that there are tremendous opportunities for spatial equality. I've been very impressed with some of the transit-oriented development ideas that are being kicked around at Aloha Stadium, with 98 acres, with a lot of potential for housing projects. The Navy taking a hard look at Pearl Harbor, right by the transit center there. And naturally, from what we hear from the city and county of Honolulu, and also from Kamehameha schools around Kapolamaivile, Kalihi, and Waiava, tremendous opportunities there. The bottom line, though, from all of this, is that there are billions of dollars of potential value that could be harvested. New property tax sources as well, not taxing existing property taxpayers, but new payers. And that's through the creation of new developments and housing and so forth and so on. Jenny, you could take the slide down now. Thank you. Now, from a banking perspective, all of this is extremely bankable. I think it makes a lot of sense to the private sector. If you recall, pre-COVID, we had a shortage of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60,000 houses. And with rail, we see an opportunity for a lot of affordable housing. Now, again, Hawaii real estate has always withstood crises, and I don't think this pandemic's going to be anything different. I believe we should be thinking out of the box, and also even challenge ourselves before we say that 10 million tourists are too many. Think of the possibilities in the future of a second airport, maybe a privatized airport at a location where rail is accessible. And with all of the new community developments, tremendous opportunities for spatial equality as well. Naturally, through all that, we'll be focused on more quality than quantity, and try to make the tourism experience a lot more positive and better for our residents as well. Now, with COVID, the state will be faced with some real challenges from a budgetary perspective. There'll be a $2 billion tax shortfall, probably by given that COVID started in March. In a year, by next March, we'd be looking at a negative impact of a little over $2 billion. The governor, the legislature is going to have a really tough job ahead. Do they look at furloughs, or do they look at stopping rail at Middle Street? There are many things that they're going to have to make a decision on. I hope we have the vision and the foresight to proceed with developments that can really be positive for Hawaii in the future. And with that, I'll end my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that sharing. If we have time again, we're gonna ask those questions again at the end. Let's go for, let's have Tim. Tim, you're on. Right, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Aloha, everyone. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to play a video.
I lived in Chinatown last 23, 24 years. Big homeless problem, big drug problem. The neighborhood just wasn't ever safe, even when the police moved to town. And we were always trying to get out, but the cost of living was so high in Hawaii that it made that almost an impossible dream.
Tommy Nguyen's story is similar to thousands of others in Hawaii whose dream of being a homeowner was simply out of reach. Hawaii has some of the highest housing costs in the country. So when developer SAMKOO entered the affordable housing market in 2016 with Kapiolani residents and the central Ala Moana, the response was overwhelming.
When we had the seminar for both projects, first project for I think 290 some units, we had over 4,000 people showed up. And for the second project, for 310 affordable units, we had more than 5,000 people showed up.
I was applicant number 0001.
Linda Susan Yasunaga was one of the lucky 292 people who became the first owners of the affordable units at Kapiolani Residence.
And it's the first time I've owned a place of my own. The building is really beautiful. The quality of everything in the unit is, you could just see that they didn't cut corners. I always lived in a home and I always spent a lot of time outside. Drinking morning coffee or having a glass of wine in the evening, and now with this 9th floor I feel at home again.
I don't have to use my car to walk anywhere to get anything, but that's a curse too, because every time my wife says I need this from the store, I don't have a choice but to walk across the street now.
Location was an important factor for SAMKOO in building the 45-story Kapiolani residence. Minutes away from the beach and bustling downtown Honolulu, its central location is unmatched in terms of convenience. But Timothy says it was also about quality and putting people's needs and desires before profit.
I believe we're different from other affordable housing projects in terms of the quality, definitely. We brought in Samsung appliances, Samsung split system air conditioning unit into all the units. And we have the great cabinetry company from Korea, Hansem, coming in to change the paradigm of affordable housing.
A public-private partnership with the City and County of Honolulu and the state's Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation allowed Kapiolani residents to become one of the first of its kind, offering 60% of the total units in the building to qualified buyers. Kapiolani residence was sold out at groundbreaking. SAMKOO's second affordable condominium project, the Central Ala Moana, was 95% sold within a month, with construction scheduled to begin in May 2019.
I'm proud to say this is a win-win-win situation between the government sector and private sector, and also public sector as buyers.
Timothy believes if other developers could see the life-changing impact of simply adding people into the partnership, there can be more quality affordable housing projects in the future.
I was fortunate to share the joy of most of the first-time home buyers being able to win the lottery and being able to move in actually after 2 years of their hard work in preparation to move in. And I saw their tears and I cried with them and I saw their joy, so I was rejoicing with them. And it is great sense of pride and sense of fulfillment to be able to share their feelings. So I learned my lesson as a developer to follow people, not follow money. And I think that's one of the key to success that we've achieved here in Hawaii.
And this one came along and it was very, very reasonable and kind of unbelievable at the same time. Like now we're homeowners and we're planning for retirement. Now we have a future. Before it was just get month by month and then see what happens. But now everything's changed.
Well, life certainly now is a lot simpler. safer, and now I don't have to worry about where I'm going to live the next 30 years.
Thank you for watching. Thank Erin and Paul for doing their speeches. Thanks, Erin, for forecasting. It is very important for a developer like us, like me, to know when to go in, what market that we can expect. And it is very essential key element for us to know the forecast of construction market upcoming, especially in this pandemic. And thanks to Paul for covering up the Hawaii financial updates. And it was great to hear from Paul saying that Hawaii will overcome the pandemic crisis. That is a very positive message that you gave us. As a developer, yeah, we need to survive this pandemic crisis. At the same time, we need to provide what we can as a developer to contribute to overcome this pandemic crisis. So starting off on that, the demand and supply, as many of my prospect buyers asking, is there still demand in this pandemic crisis? A lot of people lost their job, and we're hoping that we'll recoup from this anytime soon, next year or two to come up. And we were sold out, as you know, but instead of good news is instead of a cancellation notice or a request, we're having more people trying to be on the wait list if there's any, in case there's any fallout due to a pandemic crisis. So I know that there's a demand. And as you saw the video, we had close to 10,000 people showed up for a total of about 600 affordable housing units. And the government, state government stated back in 2014 that they're forecasting about need of about 65,000 units, and about 40 to 50% would be under affordable housing. And up to now, I think there's a little less than 10% being built. And we need to build more for upcoming 5 years more so. And I definitely want to try and contribute more on providing more affordable housing in Hawaii. And just briefly go over first project, Kapolani Residence, was completed in 2018. And it was, we targeted for a little bit lower income than what the state agency, Hawaii Housing Development Finance Corporation was asking. It was in between 80% to 140% AMI, area median income, but we lowered it down to 120% area median income and below. We didn't have any minimum, which was about 80% AMI. It turns out that the demand was there, and majority of the affordable housing buyer of 292 units, which was 60%, were purchased by people with income status under 80% AMI range. And for the second project that we're on right now, we're expected to have a completion next September. Hopefully that this pandemic, during this pandemic crisis, we're hoping to keep up with that schedule for those 512 home owners. It was sold out in no time. First project was sold out before groundbreaking. Second project was sold out after in weeks of groundbreaking. But this second project, we wanted to give more opportunity to different group who were left out because of this first project being under 120% and below. And so we had the minimum of 80% AMI range to 140% AMI range. And we're successful in terms of providing in variety group of income level. And one of the questions that we as a panelist were asked, how do we fight the social exclusion and bring this social integration? And I think we, in a way, achieved through the two projects from offering from zero income to 140% AMI income level. So we are looking into more of variety groups of income level group in Hawaii so that everybody will have chance to apply and be qualified with their income. And we intend to keep on building more to different groups of income level in Hawaii. And the reason why I'm here today, thanks to United Nations, UN Habitat Group, and also FIABCI, the International Real Estate Federation, that I was invited to UN conference, a high political forum about 3 years ago, because they were focusing on this 4 Ps, which is public-private partnership And simply adding people into this 3Ps became 4Ps project. So we were the model that they asked me to come and present at the UN headquarters 3 years ago. And I think that this is a more needed affordable housing project in Hawaii. And thanks to Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation for facilitating this 201H program, which offers which offers 60% affordable and 40% market. And by going into this government program, we were exempted from height, density, and some city zoning regulation. And as a trade-off for being dominantly affordable housing unit to moderate income unit. And we're able to work with them, and we're successful. As I mentioned, that we're also allowed in for those two projects. And just a restriction of sort of the sales and transfer restriction is a buyback program, which is 10-year buyback program. The owner has to reside in the unit for the next 10 years. And after 10 years, they can sell it to the market. And once they do that, whatever their capital gain is, they have to give back to the government to implement more affordable housing as a shared appreciation equity. And that's the condition that the buyers has to provide, agreed on by buying the unit under the market price. And today I just wanted to go over a few challenges and the solution that I think it'll work. And we all talk about recouping from this pandemic. We all talk about this, how do we fight this social exclusion to bring Hawaii economies back and bring back the social integration through the new projects. And I think it is by doing this partnership with the government. As I mentioned, that HHFDC was a facilitator of this 201H program that we're in. But I urge them, I'm consistently communicating with them to step up and become a partnership. I try to focus on that the word partnership. When we say partnership, from the beginning to the end, we have to go through this process together. The reason why the other developers, in spite of my success on 2 projects being sold out, they're hesitant to come into this market is because of lengthy entitlement and permitting process and strict rules and regulation on thinking that there's not going to be enough sales, there's not going to be enough profit. And I guess I try to tell other developers that that's not going to be the case. Although, we work with the government, we need to have more lenient regulations and rules, and we need to alter their program. They need to alter their program to fit into the current market, current economic situation like pandemic right now. So I'm not here to complain about the government, lack of the program that can support, but rather to recommend, rather to suggest that we work together as a partner. From being a facilitator to partnership, that we'll have the ownership. And I think as long as we make this community project, the affordable housing community project, meaning that we need to talk to the prospect buyers, we need to know their economic situation, we need to alter the rules and regulation according to the need of those possible prospect buyers out there in order to benefit. So by doing this private sector and the public sector working together as a partnership, it'll benefit people at the end. And it's all about people. It's not enough to emphasize more because they're the end user. And we're talking about next generation, second generation, third generation, once they buy their homes. My projects, they have to stay in there for next 10 years. And within these 10 years, these children will grow. And it is hard to see this. So we're pushing out these millennials. So we're pushing out these great young professionals out to the mainland and different part of the world because the living costs and especially the housing cost is too high. So I suggested that we work with government and the private sector together by communicating with our community, with those people, and create more community projects. So for the developers out there, I think by doing more sold out projects, we can make the profit that we anticipate. And by working with the government as a partner, we can make the rules and regulation and restriction a little bit lenient and try to offer them that this will be great change that we can make to have sustainable and accountability on having and providing more affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Awesome. I really like the idea of follow the people rather than follow the money. And I think it's very hard for the developers sometimes to follow. Okay, our next speaker is Chris. Chris, you're on.
I'm very honored to be here on behalf of Kamehameha Schools. I want to thank Tim as well for the invite to participate. I think it's truly a unique time in Honolulu as it is across the world with what we're dealing with COVID and certainly affordable housing across the world, but certainly here in Honolulu. I want to start with, before I share kind of some of the great things that we're doing with our work in commercial real estate here at Kamehameha Schools, first I want to share a little context and a little history. I want to start with, first and foremost, Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop. She's the great-granddaughter of Kamehameha the Great, and was the last lineal descendant. And for those of you who are not aware, Kamehameha united the Hawaiian Islands under one kingdom. In her life, she saw a tremendous amount of change, and all the work that we do is derived from her vision of where the Hawaiian people how they can be restored. So during her lifetime, she saw a huge change in Hawaii. The population was significantly impacted from the time of Western contact with Cook in 1778. The Hawaiian population was estimated to be about 800,000. When Pauahi was born in 1831, it was 124,000. So decimated by smallpox, leprosy, the flu, influenza, Western diseases that had just had a huge impact on the health, the culture, the language, and the identity of the Hawaiian people. When she actually passed in 1884, the population from her birth was 124,000, and it dropped to 44,000. For her, she looked to move forward and establish Kamehameha Schools. She believed that she could restore her people through education, and she bequeathed her land. She had no descendants of her own, so she bequeathed her lands to the trust, which we know today as Kamehameha Schools. The lands actually she inherited from other alii and spread across all the islands of Hawaii. The majority of it were on the islands of Oahu and the islands of Hawaii. And it totaled about 353,000 acres. So for us, it all drives back to fulfilling Pauahi's mission and vision of restoring her people through the education of Native Hawaiian children. And we take that very seriously in all the work that we do in our commercial real estate. To that end, in 2015, the trustees and our leadership reassessed what we were doing and set a vision for 2040 that within a generation of 25 years, we would see a thriving Lahui where our learners would achieve post-secondary educational success, enabling good life and career choices, and also envision that our learners will be grounded in Christian and Hawaiian values and will be leaders who contribute to their communities both locally and globally. And that vision had set the framework for all of the work that we are doing in our commercial real estate portfolio now. And to give you a snapshot of that, this in 2019, we actually had an impact of over 85,000 learners across the islands. 7,000 of those students are supported directly on our 3 campuses. We have 3 major campuses on the most populous islands, Oahu, Maui, and the Big Island. And those are K through 12 schools. And in addition to that, we have 29 preschools we support, as well as about little over 13,000 extension education learners through scholarships and other programs. Community investing, for us, it's not, we can't do enough through our schools. We actually are looking to provide support through the community to educate as many Hawaiian children as we can. And we do that all total about 58,000 learners and their families. And we spend approximately last year $85 million supporting partner organizations and public schools. Again, we just cannot educate enough kids on our campuses, so we look to leverage and support where we can in the community and with other schools. So how do we do that? We do that through our endowment, which is derived from the lands that Pauahi put in trust with us. Today, that values are a little over $12 billion. We are the Hawaii largest private landowner in Hawaii with 363,000 acres. Our portfolio, just to give you a snapshot of that $12 billion portfolio, so roughly a third of it, $3.7 billion, is in Hawaii real estate. And the other roughly 70% is in our financial assets group, which invests in, all across the globe, stocks, bonds, equities, etc. We spend roughly 4% of that endowment a year on our mission of education. And it's spread across our campuses, as I said, scholarships, community programs, educational support, as well as our land stewardship. The commercial portfolio, when you look at it and break it down, our real estate portfolio, the majority of it is in agricultural and conservation lands. And about 1% of it is in our commercial portfolio, which is about 4,600 acres. Of that commercial portfolio, about 1,000 of it is really where we derive that $3.7 billion in value. So it's very concentrated, small amount of the overall portfolio. In terms of the ag and conservation, we spent, I think it was last year, about $15 million that we do on the stewardship of those lands that we direct spend every year. And that's to manage watershed, manage forestry, all different sorts of programs that we do. Our portfolio, commercial portfolio, you can see on the left, is about 80% of it is in ground leases. About 20% is in space leases. Ground leases, as you all know, is a very conservative sort of return on investment. We are actually, one of the unique things is over the next 10 years, quite a bit of our land is, those ground leases are expiring. And so it provides us the opportunity to kind of look at our portfolio and determine how we can reshape it so that we can provide better, increase the endowment so that we can spend more. That portfolio overall, you can see on the right, it's about 36% retail, 20% hospitality. So that's the major component. And then it's sprinkled out the other 50%. It's fairly diversified. We always bring it back to, so why are we managing this real estate? And again, it's really about our mission. And it's not just on the commercial side about making money. That is a huge component because the more we make, the more we can spend on education. But it's not the only thing. We look at all of the work that we do through our 5 values at Kamehameha Schools, which is the economics, the education, culture, community, and environment. Now, these all have an impact on the keiki here and on our mission. It's after 130 years of educating children, you realize really quickly that it's hard to educate a child if they don't have a home, if they don't have clothing, if they don't have food. So when we look at managing our lands, we're looking at ways that we can have an impact across multiple bottom lines. It was great. Brianna Rose was on earlier and talking about the Aloha Plus Challenge. We are actually working right now to align our entire INA portfolio, the agricultural, the conservation lands with our commercial lands. And we're working to measure the work that we do so that we can have a bigger impact. And this year we're making a big push to do that with combining all of our lands into one portfolio and looking at it from the perspective of an overall management. So when we come back to our strategy, bottom line is you always look for where are the opportunities when you want to redevelop your properties. And first and foremost, you always look at where are the challenges. We all know Hawaii is an extremely expensive place to live. It's been discussed, already on the call, but you can see here, if you look at the CPI index, some of the biggest components is the medical care, energy, and housing. And, the impact that has on our lives here in our communities. The other element we look at is when you zero in on housing, you can see the challenges we've had as many other places in the country and across the world. 1959, when Hawaii became a state, the average price of a single family home was about $21,000, and the average income for a family of four was about $6,300 a year. You flash forward to 2019, we're almost $800,000 for a home and $100,000 for that income. You can see that housing has just gotten out of control. We always look at it, I find it interesting when you look at the amount of permits that are being built. And you can see we peaked in the 70s at about 22,000 permits in a given year. And this just illustrates we are simply not building enough housing. And we need to do a better job of providing more. So when we look at it, we look at everything from a regional approach. There's some areas of our portfolio where they might need housing is much more of an acute need. There's other areas where we want to focus on businesses or, stewardship of the INA or education. So again, we're trying to balance the entire portfolio and our returns across that portfolio. We might be willing to take less of a return in certain market areas because it's something the community needs, but we look to balance that with maybe a better return in other markets from a financial standpoint. So I talked earlier about how our ground leases, typically ground leases are 50, 60 years old. And as I said, we have quite a few of our ground leases are expiring over the next 10 years. So it's provided us an opportunity to reshape and relook at our portfolio. And what's been great is that a lot of these lands fall within our rail system that is coming, and then we're all spending money on. So it's important for us to take advantage of that infrastructure, and also push forward the dream of TOD to make it a reality. So we have, of the 21 station areas, we have 5 station areas that will have a big impact, and we have lands that are near. Waipahu is the first for us along the rail line, and then Waiava, which is a huge opportunity for housing over the next 50 years. Kahanoe, which is where the Pearl Ridge Mall area is. Then coming into town, we get to the Kapalama-Iwalei area. It's our largest urban land holdings. Then we get to Kakako, of course, which everyone's familiar with. And then eventually, we're hopeful that if the rail goes to the university area in Mo'iliili, we have our lands there. So potentially upwards of 6 areas that we can impact. Just going really quickly, Waipahu, we have 3.5 acres. That's right adjacent to the rail station. We're working on plans right now to develop low-income housing, 60% AMI and below, roughly 500 apartment units. That's part of a mixed-use project that we have roughly 60,000 square feet of commercial, a grocery anchor. We're looking to make Hikimoi a great sort of downtown destination and mixed-use gathering area for the community of Waipahu. We have Waiava, which is lands that actually we had a deal many years ago with a Hawaii home builder that for various reasons didn't work out. We took these properties back in 2009 and have been working on master planning this for a large mixed-use master plan community. We have in the A'apuaha area there about 9,000 acres. We're planning on doing a master plan of about a little over 2,000 acres in 5 phases over roughly 50 years, 11,000 plus homes and 500,000 square feet of commercial. We look to do this as a very dense sort of suburban urban market. You can see at the bottom here where the rail is kind of touching in the half mile. We would do shuttle systems to get down the rail and take advantage of that, but it's going to be a much denser community. Kaneohe, which I talked about, we own the golf course here, Pearl Country Club, which was on a ground lease. We're taking that property back and we'll be managing it directly in about a month. The Windward Mall, we own the land under that. That's under a long-term lease with Washington Prime. Obviously, the Sumida Farms, that's in our conservation portfolio. And then down here along the water, we've got 17.5 acres that we're in the process of master planning. You can see the rail station stop right here. So there's tremendous opportunity. We hope to build upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 homes in this area, workforce housing, affordable housing for Kamehameha. Here's a snapshot. You can look at those lands. Kapalama coming in, I mentioned before, this is our largest urban land holdings. We have about 105 acres. It's in a great location between H1 and Nimitz. You have the airport, the harbor, downtown, Chinatown. It's a great community already. It's very much a mixed-use community with a lot of daytime job population, housing in the area, a lot of schools in the area. There hasn't been any new development, significant development in quite some time. Obviously, the rail's coming in here on Dillingham. The stop will be here next to the community college. Our lands are all in blue. There's other large stakeholders in the area between the state, the city and county, Castle and Cook. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to reshape this entire area. And then obviously the Kapalama Canal, which the city is working on, a revitalization project that we will get to participate in and work with them on. The vision for the area is roughly 4,000 to 5,000 units. Again, market housing, AMI 80 to 140, but we will go below that and do some LIHTC rental projects. We're going to look to create roughly 7 acres of green space that's really lacking in that area. Almost 1 million square feet of retail and 1 million to 1.5 million square feet of industrial. There's a rendering of our phase 1, which is roughly 16 acres, runs along Dillingham and then up the canal here in sort of an L-shaped. You can see the community college here would be at the bottom. On the left is where the rail station is, just under my blue area here. And again, we're looking at establishing a large park here along the canal area. We're working on our first project there right now with a development partner. Kaka'ako, many of you know, this was actually our first master plan community that we did and got that passed. I think it was in 2009. We have roughly 50 acres, a little over 50 acres in the area. 29 acres are in our master plan, which you can see in blue. Other lands, the long-term ground leases that are in the pink color, and then the yellow is our Mackay lands that are on the ocean side and on the park side, total of about 51 acres. In the first phase, we developed 4 out of the 9 blocks, which you can see here in yellow, including SALT, which we saw the video on earlier, roughly 1,336 units, 34% of which were reserved housing units. Although we were only required to do 20%, we really pushed and wanted to lead with affordable housing and workforce housing. That's important to us. We developed a little over 200,000 square feet of commercial space and about 50,000 feet of open space. We're working right now diligently to start the development on the remaining 5 blocks, this increment 2 as we call it. Blocks C and D, we're looking to do majority of workforce and affordable housing. And then blocks G, H, and I, more market housing and maybe some senior housing. We're really working hard to create a unique gathering area that connects SALT with Cook and Oahe Street. And this is part of our program in making the connection between Mother Waldron Park and the Gateway Park. And we're looking at having Cook Street to be a really unique boulevard, great retail gathering area. And we're also looking to working to connect with Howard Hughes's master plan on Oahe Street. Mo'iliili, we've got about 6 acres near the university. And we've been working on this for a couple of years. We're looking at about 300 rental housing units, student housing, dorm style, about 200 rooms, 700 beds, about 80,000 feet of commercial, and a university hotel, roughly 180 rooms. So this would be the last destination for us on the rail, to the extent that Mo'iliili gets a rail stop at some point. And we also have our Kahala lands in Waialae. We are just finishing up Kūʻono Marketplace, about 40,000 feet. And we actually had our first tenant open up last week, Hawaii Pacific Health. And then, of course, we have our Heia lands in Kaneohe, which we're in the process right now of master planning the Windward Mall and a lot of the adjacent industrial lands where we have leases that are expiring over the next 7 to 10 years. So we're excited about it. For us, it really boils back down always to the children and our mission, which is educating the children of Hawaii and lifting the entire Lahui so that the future is bright, because we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Mahalo.
Thank you, Chris.
Danielle Grossenbacher is one of the FIABCI representatives to the United Nations, and she's just going to give us brief words to wrap up.
Thank you very much. Since we're out of time, I won't make a resume of everything that was said, but basically it's partnership. It's housing is a human right, as the executive director of UN Habitat said. And it's important to build a lot more, especially after the pandemic. I think the demand will increase exponentially. And as we saw examples during these presentations, partnerships with the governments and people are very, very important. So we have at FIABCI a site that's www.urbanthinkingtalks.com that gives examples from around the world of solutions to affordable housing, of partnerships that are really working to create more affordable housing. So I encourage you to go there and see what is being done around the world, and that might inspire you. We got some great lessons today on how to work, how to make profit, how to use the sales before the buildings are started to make a profit. So all these ideas you can find again at www.urbanthinkingtalks.com. Thank you very much.
Show the video one more time. I just want to reiterate that every single person has the opportunity. If you do not have the code to watch Push the Movie, please make sure you email us so that you can get that movie. That movie is really, really incredible. It's a great movie. You must watch it. If you're in the United States, the link is for free. Our sponsor Guaranteed Rate allows you to watch that movie. You can watch it through Thursday. We have, I think there are still a few registrations left, so please watch the movie. We'd also like to thank the Honolulu Board of Realtors, Lokai Development, and Old Republic Title, who are our sponsors. Please join us again tomorrow for our event. It's going to continue to talk about the TOD and what we can do to really make a change. Again, the idea is, what are we going to do? So let's close, if we can, and watch the video, the UN Habitat video one more time, this time with sound. And thank you all.
Nuotelette panka rohtumus. Tälle talvet, kevät, kässi ja vast chakcha.
で12人から13人ぐらいがまあそれぞれ友達同士で集まってでみんなでそのなんていうかまあ気持ちよく楽しく暮らせる家を作ろうっていうことで。
L'autre, il est à me le coloni et au medon. Là, elle est à mais Dewi. Imanyua na merindo dido bede. Mi do poro fa mi me do aya ijemi lo. Enoyo wo ezo mi do po aya ijemi.
هذا عندي غاب جبته من هناك وياي من جيت من صلاح الدين. ربحت في هذا المخيم هو أن نجيت أنا وعائلتي من الموت في هذه المنطقة.
البيت مكان الذي أعيش فيهم. ساعدوني حتى ساعدوني إلى أن أصل إلى مجتمع. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Please watch the movie tonight, and we will see you tomorrow.